it.
That's what I'm talking about.
Wait.
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Good afternoon. I am Beverly Macy, and we are at the Riot Games campus today, and I'm here with Naz Aletaha. Naz, so great to see you.
So good to have you.
Yes, thank you so much. It's really nice to be here with you, and we have so much to talk about in the world of esports and Riot Games. I can't wait to get started. So I thought we could begin with hopefully a good overview of your amazing background. You've done so many different things, Activision, Sony. Maybe you could bring people up to speed on kind of your background, and then we'll dive into the world of esports.
Sure. Well, today I am the global head of League of Legends Esports. But from a background standpoint, I'm a California native, born and raised. I'm a Trojan. Please don't hold that against me.
No problem.
Studied business in undergrad and with a finance concentration, and went into corporate finance because I was good at it, but not necessarily because I was very passionate about it. And I think that's a lesson I learned early on, which was to chase your passion. But, got amazing experience working at Sony Motion Pictures as a financial analyst. And it was around that time that I started to kind of question, like, is this the right path for me? I don't know if I'm really loving this. And it was around that time someone told me, that, oh, you should check out this video game company called Activision. And my background in video games before that, I grew up playing video games. And so, some of my earliest memories was playing Nintendo NES. And I had just never dreamed that there was a career path there. It was not anything that had ever occurred to me. But I was fortunate enough to, get the opportunity to join the team at Activision at the time and join them as an analyst, but in a marketing group. And for me, that was kind of a great way to take this skill set that I had developed, but parlay it into a bit of a different path, which was more marketing, sales. And so spent a couple years there, and then Riot Games called, and at the time they were a very, very small company, much smaller company than what we are today. So I joined Riot in January of 2012. And at the time, people thought, you're crazy, because again, working at one of the biggest, if not the biggest, most successful video game company at the time, and coming over to a relatively small company that had just one game, League of Legends, seemed risky and maybe not what one would do if early in their career. And but I fell in love with the company. I fell in love with their mission, and the opportunity to join a smaller company where I could wear multiple hats and really help to build from the ground up is what was so appealing to me. And so, yeah, I've been there ever since. It's been 10 years that I've been here at Riot in esports, but it's been this incredible journey to have the opportunity to build a global sport. And I'm even amazed when I get to say that. That's just, it's been a ride.
And now you are the global head of the League of Legends esports. So that is really, it says a lot. And that journey is fantastic. And I know we have a lot of students in our audience, so it's great to hear the background. So let's get into the world of esports. Early on in esports, you had to explain it to executives and to people. Why should we care about esports? What is it even? How do people play? It's not really competitive. It's not really a sport. Do you find that that's still the challenge today, or have we kind of progressed from there?
It's a great question. We've progressed so far from there. But you're absolutely right. In our early days, there was this need. And I say early days, even as of a couple of years ago, right? There was this need to really educate the market about what is this thing called esports? Why are so many people tuning in? And even this notion of streaming, whether it's esports or a stream or streaming. I have parents ask me all the time, like, I don't understand. I come home and my kid is watching other people play video games. Like, what is that? And my explanation is always, well, what's the difference between that and you and I sitting on our couch watching a basketball game or a football game? It's the same. It's entertainment. It's their version of sport. But to answer your question, I started in esports running business development and partnerships. And so part of my job really was exactly what you just said, which is educate, bring on other partners from the mainstream, I guess you could call it, right? And so to do that, you need to prove the value of this thing, esports, and give them that reason to care. It was interesting in those early days. It almost didn't matter. You could put incredible numbers, viewership numbers, engagement numbers in front of people, but there was this skepticism, and I'd say it was healthy skepticism, at the time of, is this a fad? I don't know. Is this going to be around for very long? Most people had their, I always call it the aha moment when they came to an event. That was, you could show videos, you could show numbers, but nothing can substitute, I think, the electricity in the air of any sporting event or any live event, right? You can't really replicate that on a VOD. And you could see the light bulbs go off when people would see Madison Square Garden packed to the brim with esports fans, right? Cheering and so engaged. And, the comment I would always get is, they never leave their seats and they're not even on their phones. Like when you go to any other sporting event, people are in and out of their seats. They're maybe distracted. They're talking to their friends, and our fans are laser focused, watching the play-by-play. Like they do not want to miss a minute. So I think today it's evolved to, there is a general, I think, baseline understanding of esports. And I think many companies and marketers, I think, have reached that point where they know you can't avoid it anymore.
Well, that's a really good point. And so much of what you just said is full of great information. So that idea that this fan engagement, which is so important in the sports universe, right? How do we keep fans engaged? And whether it's the Major League Baseball or soccer or football, really trying to think of how to be relevant. And yet esports is relevant already, at least in terms of the new digital world we're all finding ourselves in. Clearly coming out of the pandemic now, it really revved up the esports desire and watchability and watching. So a couple of things that I'd like to talk about. One is, not everybody realizes, I think, that there are actually leagues and teams and players, just like in real, quote, real sports. Yeah. Not that it's real sports, but non-digital sports, right? So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know that League of Legends is, famous for really blazing the trail in this area.
Yes, we, so for League of Legends is the biggest esport in the world by pretty much by number of metrics, whether that's viewership, fandom, but also just in terms of our structure. So we have 12 regional leagues all around the world. Just next door is where our North America League competes out of. But so you can imagine a league in North America and Europe and China and South Korea and so on and so on. So 12 altogether. Each of those leagues, which is owned and operated by us at Riot, has on average 10 to 12 pro teams that are competing. In China, as an example, there's 17 teams. And these teams all compete starting in January in our regular season and playoffs within their region. And then there's 3 times a year where we bring the best of the best teams from across these regional leagues to compete against each other in these kind of global events. So we have a mid-season invitational in May that takes the top team from every regional league and pits them against each other. And then our jewel event, which is our World Championship, that's our Super Bowl, it's our World Cup. It happens it starts at late September and goes through early November. So about a 5-week tournament that essentially crowns the best of the best League of Legends team. And what I'll say that I think is amazing in terms of I think where we were just 10, 12 years ago and where we're at today is all of these teams, the professional players who are competing, they're doing this as a living. Like, there are almost 1,000 people in the world who play League of Legends as a pretty lucrative career. And that was part of our vision early on, which was we want to build a sport where it can be a viable career path for pros. It can be a very meaningful life pursuit to be a part of this sport and kind of deliver it on a level of quality and production value that you see in traditional sports, because we think that's what's our audience is worth that's what they deserve. So that kind of vision back then, which a lot of people again thought we were a little bit out of our minds to invest what we invested to really build out this very global infrastructure, is today the biggest esport in the world, and pro players are thriving, and it's really exciting and validating to see.
So this whole ecosystem has grown up around some borrowing some from traditional sports and then creating a whole new ecosystem, because even the watchers earn money, do they not? There are watchers who stream on Twitch watching the pro games that you put on.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There's a whole ecosystem built around it. Our viewers, when you come and watch, we can drop you rewards as an example, and there'll be in-game rewards for, when you play League of Legends. To your point, streamers, you could be a streamer on Twitch, and they earn subscription revenue when viewers are subscribing to their streams. And so it's a massive, massive ecosystem now. I think I saw some numbers recently that said there are 1 billion gaming viewers. That's not just us, but across the industry. And when you think about that, that is bigger than, combine the biggest streaming platforms, Netflix, Hulu, et cetera. You still don't get to 1 billion users, I don't think. And so gaming is now this very, very prevalent form of entertainment. Whether that's watching an individual streamer, watching, the biggest sports competitions like League of Legends Worlds, there's something there for this massive growing audience.
And you also talked about the crown jewel that you have, your World Cup. And you did something really, really, really unique when you were in charge of partnerships in terms of Louis Vuitton and the actual trophy. And so there's so much inside of that for our business school watchers today to think about the business of that. First of all, why would Louis Vuitton want to match with an esport? That was a first, and that was a few years ago, right?
2019.
Yeah. Right. And so that was really revolutionary. Now that's become kind of part of the legend of League of Legends, right? But also your vision was that fit. So can you talk a little bit about how you saw that coming together?
Yeah, it's I think some of the best partnerships are the ones that are the most unexpected, right? But to do it, both sides have to be very willing to listen to the other side, to understand and dive deep, I think, into the audience of that brand. And also just, I think for Louis Vuitton, like really understanding and appreciating the legacy of their brand. Partnerships for us they're really important. I think they're important across any sport. All sports have big sponsors, right? That's a huge revenue stream. So from a business side, it's a necessity. For us, though, we made the decision early on, that we want partnerships, but we want the right partnerships. And we want partnerships that, yes, while they need to have a financial transaction, usually, we don't want them to feel transactional. And what I mean by that is I didn't want them to feel like an advertisement, because our audience does not respond well to that. I mean, most audiences don't, but especially I think the younger audience, they don't want to be marketed at. I think the way to engage them is really to level up the experience, right? If people can understand the value you've added to their experience with a thing, then I think that they will embrace the brand and they will be thankful that the brand is there. And in esports, these mainstream brands coming in the right way and executing in a way that really delighted the audience, it gave the sport this legitimacy that I think the audience craved, right? Because imagine that you've been maybe talking about esports to your friends, you've been telling them like, no, I swear thing, and he's master, and he's Louis Vuitton, and he's statement, here he's Benz, and they say, we're support your sport the same way we support the NBA and the NBA, and fans think they're doing, and also think partner in a way that really organic, and again, kind of levels up and elevates the overall experience, as opposed to we're just slapping a logo here and video ad here, because we want eyeballs. It really is this kind of a partnership, and that's why I refuse to call them sponsorships, because at least to me, I think of when I think sponsorships, I think it's a menu and a price. And for us, we want to go beyond that with our partners. We really want to take 1 + 1 and make it equal 4. You know, what can we do together that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do on our own? And so Louis Vuitton, again, probably the most unexpected of these partnerships. You know, they came in early on in late 2018. Maybe we started talking, and they had an amazing curiosity, which I appreciated, and I think maybe is a bit unexpected from a brand that has so much history and so much prestige. They had such a curiosity about our world. They were so open-minded. We really started talking about this trophy trunk because they do the same for the FIFA World Cup and all these other very prestigious sports moments. And you know, they really bought into our vision, and we, you know, so we kind of held hands and walked forward together. And as we started talking, there was always these, and what if, and what if, and what if. And so in addition to this trophy case that they designed for us, they also essentially dressed a couple of our in-game characters. Right. So Nicolas Guerskier, who's their women's designer, you know, who dresses the celebrities of the world and has incredible fashion lines with LV, you know, lent us his talents, which is amazing. To do that, they also launched an actual capsule collection that was a whole line of Louis Vuitton product that was inspired by the world of League of Legends. And I think for both of us, you know, for us, it was amazing to be able to infuse fashion, you know, into our world, and maybe into a world where many weren't used to seeing high end, you know, luxury fashion brands. And for them, you know, it kind of extends this relevance, right? Here is this massive audience that I think, of course, knows the Louis Vuitton brand. It's such an iconic brand. Everybody knows it. But this is such a different way for them to engage with that brand. They can engage with it with digital skins. They can see this trophy case at, you know, the pinnacle moments of the sport. And so it ended up being this multifaceted, really well executed, I'd say, partnership that gave fans for both brands, Louis Vuitton and League of Legends, ways to engage and be delighted.
Well, and it was just brilliant, because everything you've said is exactly right. And for the Louis Vuitton side, they got access, real access, legitimate, authentic, which is such an important concept, access to a, as you said, massive audience that they can't reach otherwise, or we're having a hard time to reach at that time. Many of the legacy brands, right, all around the planet were trying, especially in the 2018, 2019 timeframe, to think of how do we really be relevant in an authentic way. And this was just brilliant, because I actually featured it in one of my marketing classes, because before I met you, because it was so good. It was so unexpected, as you said. And I would love to, you know, you talked a little bit about what was in it for Louis Vuitton, right? I'm sure those early meetings, was there a lot of convincing that had to be done, or was it kind of, you know, we really are open and we want to hear what you have to say?
You know, they were very open, and I think that's surprising for a lot of folks. They were and are just wonderful, wonderful partners. like I said, that they had a very natural curiosity, and they immersed themselves. They didn't want to just know surface level about our world. They wanted to get in. They wanted to see the characters. They wanted to understand the sport. And so there honestly wasn't a ton of convincing. And in fact, as I said, what started off as a conversation just about the trophy case evolved, as more and more conversations happened, and kind of everyone put their creative hats on, and it was like, wow, there's an opportunity here to do something that will shock both industries, and so
why not?
Let's do it.
Yeah, right. Esports, you can have to take those risks sometimes. So you mentioned some other sponsors, or not sponsors, partners that you have had. Obviously, in the world of business, it's all about measurement and are we getting a return on investment, or ROI? Is this really meeting, the expectation of the fans, the expectation of us? So how do you kind of approach in terms of Riot Games, not disclosing anything that's proprietary,
Sure.
but how do you kind of generally look at measurement? Is it numbers of obviously revenue? Is it sales? Is it merchandise sales? Is it increased? How does that happen for you?
So for us on the Riot side, so our mission as a company is to be the most player-focused game company in the world. It is so deeply woven into the DNA of every team, every Rioter. It doesn't matter if you're doing something very, fan-facing like esports, or something, back office, finance, accounting. Everybody has that top of mind when it comes to decision making, and then to measuring, the success of whatever it is that we're doing. We're obviously not a nonprofit, so yes, it's a business at the end of the day. But for us, when we think about players spending, we call it, our audiences, our players, our fans, when they are spending money with us, the number one metric to us, the most important metric to us, is not how much money did they spend, but did they feel good about what they spent and the value exchange? Because that's the trust, right? At the end of the day, for us, we value our audience so much. We want to broker so much trust with them. And when we do sell them a thing, we want to make sure they feel good about buying it. And that's what's going to have them come back, or just even stay engaged with us. Even if they never buy anything again, they'll stay engaged with us and the game. And so that's how we think about things from a monetization standpoint. From an esports standpoint, we really look at viewership, of course, engagement across the sport. And when we work with our partners, when we want, of course, ROI is important to any marketer. That's why they're doing it. They're investing the money in the first place. So we work very closely hand in hand all through the year, with our partners. And we have various tools. So we engage Nielsen as an example to do media evaluations across every single one of our broadcasts that we report back to our partners to make sure they understand the value they're getting. That also helps all of us collectively say, okay, do we want to keep things the same? Do we want to change, the way things are showing up? We do sentiment analyses ourselves before and after every single event, so that we can see, how did the audience feel, not just about the event, but how our partners showed up in the event. How did they value that activation? Did they, and so that's information, again, it's, we're freely sharing, just in an effort to constantly get better, do better, by the fans of the sport.
So, talking about that brand equity, right? Really building that brand equity, and clearly trust is broken right now in the world in general. So, we were talking recently about the Edelman Trust top 10 trust issues that they put out every year. And number one is turning to business for kind of rebuilding trust as kind of a leadership role. And it really sounds like you've been taking that to heart already, that
100%.
Trust equation, which really equals the value then, right?
Yeah, for us, there's no amount of money that's worth breaking trust with our players. We really do see ourselves, like the whole purpose of our company is to hyper serve them. And when we even think about esports and the revenues that we drive, whether it's through sponsorship or media rights, ticket sales, all the kind of usual revenue streams you have in any sport, we've deliberately taken a long view where we're not trying to force a profit early on. What we want to do is build a business around the sport that keeps the sport financially sustainable, because we believe it can be around and will be around for decades. But more so, we want to take that, whatever money and profits that are made, we want to reinvest it. For us, it's all about investment over profits, all in this effort to build this sport that is worthy of these fans. And our fans have rewarded us, right, with their time, with their dedication, their passion. They tune in. And so we really do see it as very much a two-way street, that we're in this with them and for them. And they've built this right alongside us. We couldn't do this without them, right?
So clearly, I mean, everything's working and working really well, right? It's all, I know, knock on wood. And the question, I mean, two things that come to mind. One is obviously the pandemic. Did it help or hurt? And I would imagine it was a little bit of both, right? It probably hurt the live event business side of it, of course. But did you experience a growth during the pandemic in terms of user base, fan base?
We did. Like you said, it's a bittersweet, because of course the pandemic has been, so challenging and heartbreaking, just given the loss that the world has suffered. But what's been interesting, and where we kind of see ourselves in all this, is that games can provide this escape from, the trials and tribulations of the real world. And in those times where we all had to isolate and we had to be home and away from our loved ones and our friends, games offered a way to connect, right? And to bring people together. So what we did see, of course, an uptick in gameplay. On the esports side, we also did see an uptick in viewership. To your point around live events, esports is, it is a digital first sport. We can actually operate remotely or virtually fairly easily. But we love the live event aspect. It is, part of the DNA of any sport. So it hasn't been without its challenges, moving to totally virtual. And interestingly, we were one of the first sports hit by the pandemic, because we have our league out in China. And so they were hit first, had to shut down for a few weeks. And we kind of collectively as a worldwide team leaned in. Everybody got a ton of learnings from what happened there. And as the pandemic spread across the world, we were able to quickly kind of parlay those learnings to all of our other 11 regional leagues around the world. So net, most of our regional leagues at the time, in March of 2020, we went off, we stopped for maybe 2-3 weeks, and then we were right back virtually. We produced the shows remotely. Pro players were able to compete, from the safety of their own homes. And so we were able to, and have been able to, really lean into our digital roots to, make sure that the show can go on. But we miss fans in arenas. We're hopeful that fans are back this year.
So they'll be coming back, right? And you make a really good point about the connectivity. I don't think a lot of people realize that during sporting gameplay, there's a whole chat going on and a whole thing. And sometimes that has been known to be, questionable. But for the most part, I think that connectivity is a big draw, right?
Yeah.
For the esports player and watcher, streamer.
100%. It's a virtual crowd, right?
Yes.
So it's the same as us going to, I was going to call it Staples Center, crypto.com.
Right.
And being there with our friends and being there with like-minded fans and cheering with them. I think Twitch chat, as an example, offers the same thing, just in a virtual setting. And honestly, it's, beyond just the chat, it starts to become, like, for us as the broadcaster and as the publisher of League of Legends, our fans can come to our watch platform. So if you come on a game day to lolesports.com and you can log in with your game credentials for League of Legends, you're now connected directly to us. That's how we can drop you rewards. And eventually, I think we're really only starting to scratch the surface of that type of connection, because imagine if you can, how you can use that to really, again, hyper serve your audience. How can you customize content, to give them, exactly what they're looking for? How can you provide them highlights maybe that are, applicable to them because their gameplay history? How can you maybe connect them with maybe other people that play the same roles or are interested in the same pro teams? Or, how do you start to kind of create these connection points across the board? So I think that's going to be that if you ask me what the next evolution would be, I think that will be part of it. And I think it's that connection that traditional sports, I imagine, I don't want to speak on their behalf, but I imagine would be envious of, right? If you're the NBA and you could connect directly with anyone, not just who wants to tune in to watch an NBA game, but anyone who's ever picked up a basketball in their life, that's powerful.
Very.
And so that's kind of what esports in the gaming industry has. And of course, it's up to us to leverage that in a very responsible way. Again, that feels value additive to the fan experience.
So that brings me to a couple of things. I know that we're going to be having some Q&A in a few minutes, but that brings me to a couple of things to kind of close out on this part of our conversation. As you look into the future, right, you just talked about some amazing things about fan connectivity and really leveraging that and how to, leverage that in very clever ways and also continue this trust. What about sports betting? What about fantasy leagues? Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about, is that part of the world? Do you see, or I know some of the game players might be younger.
Yes.
Does that matter? Yeah, would love to hear
your thoughts. It does
matter.
To us, it does matter. So sports betting's, it's interesting. It's obviously so prevalent in the traditional sports world. Sports betting on League of Legends matches happens. We know it happens. It's not happening in any sort of official partnership with us. But it's something we're looking at. For us, again, we really look at this as if we look at it from a player first mentality, we would want, if we were ever going to go down that path, which is we're unsure today, but if we ever were to, we'd want to make sure it was in a way that was very responsible, to your point, just given the age demographic of the audience. And, our audience is generally in the 16 to 34. That's really the sweet spot. So it's something that we're still assessing. We haven't really made a decision one way or another. We do offer various fantasy products, but there's no kind of wagering or kind of financials involved. It's more just a fun way to engage, with the sport.
So in addition, that's great to hear. And it's a really interesting topic because obviously just if not that long ago, sports betting was, not even something anybody thought about or talked about right. from a quote legitimate standpoint, right? Yes. And now it's how do we integrate that, or do we, into our business model, So that's an interesting thing to think about. What other kinds of growth plans would you be looking at, or is the whole esports segment looking at? I mean, what kinds of things are you seeing coming down the pipe?
Yeah, I think for us, what's interesting, and in esports in general, but I think I'll use League of Legends, is so I liken it to you have this really rich IP, which is the League of Legends IP, and then you have this massive spectator sport. So it's kind of like, if you combined, the NBA or the NFL with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that would be really cool. Like, what are those interesting things? You suddenly are really kind of blending sports and entertainment, and that's where we sit right in the middle of, which is interesting. And so, what you'll see as an example, and what you have seen over the last many years in esports, in the League of Legends esports ecosystem, are these big kind of spectacular entertainment moments with our opening ceremonies. And, we use technology that's augmented reality or holograms or anything like that to really put on this show with music, and our pro players, enter the stage. And so I think you're going to see a lot more of that, because I think gaming, again, gaming and esports is kind of sitting at this convergence point of all these different passion points, whether that's entertainment and fashion and music. And so there's a lot that can be done, especially when you can access, this fantasy world of League of Legends, and you can combine it with the best of the best players. And then you have an audience of hundreds of millions who are eager to tune in. So I think you'll see more in that space going forward.
Well, and that's such a good point. I mean, that is an interesting thing to think about, the NBA and the Marvel universe, but you've got the League of Legends universe. Yeah. That IP is huge. So let's take that a little bit further. Netflix announced that they were getting into gaming, whatever that looks like, right? Is that scripted shows around gamers? Is it, what is it? And I know that you've got some of that background in the Sony universe, and what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, look, I think it's exciting. I think it's incredibly validating for most gamers and those of us in the gaming space. It's something we've believed would happen all along. So it's coming to fruition. And I think that's great. And I think Netflix has done a great job. You've seen multiple shows, including our own with Arcane, debut on Netflix, and it's done really, really well. And so they've done The Witcher and other properties. And I think, it's going to be exciting to see what this does in terms of bringing more people into the League of Legends universe. Once upon a time, the only way into our universe was you play League of Legends, the game. Then it became, you could play the game and you can watch the sport. And now you can play the game, you can watch the sport. We have multiple games now, not just League of Legends, that leverage the League of Legends IP. So now there's different genres of games. So maybe you don't like this genre, you play this genre. And now there's Arcane, which is this beautifully made, a television series that you may not have played a game of League in your life, but you could be a Jinx fan or a Vi fan. And so what does that do to kind of all these other touch points in our world? Does that translate to more esports fans? Maybe, I think it's too soon to see, but it's going to be interesting just to see what happens to overall fandom as a result of that.
Well, that's a really good point. I mean, it's a whole new entry point, right, for that world. So some people that wouldn't ever think of themselves liking esports would then find themselves going into. We are going to get some questions in a few minutes. So wouldn't find themselves going into esports, but they might. But they love those shows, that type of thing. So that's really wonderful. Great way to think about things. So let's kind of then talk about, we have a business school audience, obviously, and we have students that are looking at their career, looking at what do they want to do, where do they want to go. What kind of advice or guidance would you offer to the student community and people looking at this as a potential career?
I would say, first of all, there has never been a better time to come into the gaming industry. I think there are so many different career paths that now exist that maybe didn't even exist, 10 years ago. They certainly didn't exist when I was graduating college. So you can imagine all the similar roles that you would think of in traditional sports exist now in esports. I think a lot of times people think a career in esports and you think just pro play, and it's like, of course, those are the most skilled players in the world, but there's a coaching staff, there's analysts, there's marketers, there's attorneys, there's business people. Like you can everything again that you would think of, agents, everything that you see in the traditional sports landscape is now here in esports. And I think from my own experience, like the wisdom I pass on to people is that I think career paths it's this, it's never this straight path, and just be open to jumping at new opportunities. I think as they come up, I think don't chase titles, chase the work, chase the type of work.
So that's fantastic. And at UCLA Anderson with the Center for Business in Media, Sports, and Entertainment, we talk a lot about all of these different ways that people can enter into the field, and that it isn't usually a direct path. That you've got to be open, and you've got to realize that you're going to get lots of different opportunities, and don't pass them up, because you never know when one's going to lead to another. Okay,
if you would ask me if I thought I'd be leading a global sport 10 years, I would have told you were crazy. So.
That's a good point. Okay, we have a question. Do you envision any emerging technologies that might open up new business opportunities, either in terms of fan experience or partnerships, for example?
That's a great question. I wish I was more of a technologist to give you exact technologies. But I think the short answer is absolutely. What we've seen, even just in this pandemic, right, with our partners and with us, is this need to, again, take what we were doing in the physical space and translate it to virtual. So as an example, our partners who used to want to lean very heavily into experiential activations at a world championship, right, we had to have them do more virtual. And I'll be honest with you, I think that's going to stick around now, because you're able to reach exponentially more people. You now get to reach millions as opposed to thousands, right, who are in an arena. And so I think we'll see more and more of that. And how can we make that bigger and a more, because you're just the potential reach, and I think engagement is, through the roof, off the charts. So I think we'll see more of that. I think the viewing experience overall will continue to be innovated on. I know that's an area we're very keen on looking at, in terms of like, how can we, of course we want the viewing experience for our live attendees to be amazing. You come to a show, you want it to be really special. But again, at its peak, at our World Championship last year, there was 74 million people, peak concurrent viewers tuning in, which translates to well over 100 million uniques. How do we engage all of them, right? And so beyond just passive watching. And so figuring out how to make it more interactive and engaging, I think, is going to be another area of development over the years.
I don't think people realize that it's 100 million viewers at a time. People don't realize the numbers. I mean, and as you said early in our conversation, you can put all those numbers out there and it just glazes over. It's so big. And yet that's really the real truth of it.
Yep.
Yeah, excellent. Here's another question, which is from Riot's new Netflix animated series Arcane, which is a hit with both fans and critics. Can you talk about the evolution from the LOL IP to the Arcane, final product there?
Yeah, Riot has been developing the IP for, the better part of a decade. Even before there was any thought to, let's go make a TV show, there has been a team here at Riot who's been really meticulously and carefully crafting this world. You see some of it, here behind us. Every champion, we have over 150 champions of the characters in the game itself. Every one of these characters has, we call it the lore. There's backstory that's built behind them. That's not something you see in the game. When you're playing that character, you're not seeing that, but it exists. The art exists. The worlds exist. If you walk through the halls of our campus, you'll see some of that art where when they think of the parts of the world, they actually build out the world. They build out, here's what a person in that world would look like. Here's what the animals in that world would look like. Here's what the clothes in that world would look like. And they did it without, they thinking that maybe Arcane would someday exist or not. But I think that led really nicely into, as we wanted to take this IP and express it, in different ways, there's now this, call it Bible, that lives, that a team is very responsible for making sure that all of it kind of fits the world. So the team that worked on Arcane, just, Christian Link and the team, they delivered a masterpiece. If you ask me, I might be biased, but they did a really, really great job.
Great. Do we have any other questions that are coming in right now? Okay, so I think what we can do is just kind of go back to a couple more things. You've talked so much about fandom and about the partnerships that you've created, et cetera. Now about Arcane, and we've talked about growth. So let's dive in a little bit to, let's see, one of the questions that we had talked about earlier was, let's go into a little bit more about the gamers and the streamers and kind of how they're enabled to monetize. And maybe you can talk a little bit about that. And what support does Riot Games give to that part of your ecosystem?
Sure. So for pro gamers, pro gamers are earning, similar to athletes of any sport. They are hired by a team organization. That team pays them a salary. In North America, the average salary of a pro gamer is over $400,000 a year, with many of them making seven figures. Very lucrative career. I think I picked the wrong career, no, they're doing really, really well. Those teams are earning money through sponsorship, through merchandise sales. Again, kind of similar to what you see in traditional sports, so it's they're performing well. In terms of how Riot supports it, we, in 6 of our 12 regional leagues, North America here being one of them, we have franchised those leagues. So we are in partnership with those team owners, which means that, we share revenues from our side. And again, our goal and our hope is always that we want the ecosystem to thrive. We don't want it doesn't work if just one party is thriving. We need that every party, pro players, teams, venues, host cities, us, leagues, they all have to have the opportunity to thrive. And we think that we've made a ton of inroad there.
Excellent. And again, I don't think people realize that is part of what all this is about in esports, that there are these pro gamers and then also the streamers, et cetera, as we've mentioned before. Okay, well, I don't know that we have any other questions, so we might go ahead and I give you an opportunity to, first of all, it's been such an enlightening conversation, and I hope our audience has really benefited from this, because you've shared so much about how you view the industry and the dedication and vision from you and also Riot Games, which is fantastic. And so maybe you can leave us with kind of, how do you see the near future, or tell us about some of the upcoming events that Riot has that we can all be ready for? Yes.
Well, there's, I'd say, never a dull moment. We've launched League of Legends Esport back in 2011. So we're here in our 12th season. The season has started. Our first major global event coming up here in May, which is our mid-season invitational. And again, our World Championship, which comes back. It'll be a favorable time zone for everybody watching if they're, watching from the US. But it'll be in North America, culminating at the Chase Center. So home of the Golden State Warriors. We're very excited to take the event there. But it'll be a multi-city tour starting in Mexico City, going to New York City, then Toronto, and then, of course, to San Francisco. So that is going to be spectacular. We haven't brought Worlds to North America since 2016. So we're very, very excited.
Well, that's a great way to come out of the pandemic, right? Also, hopefully everybody, fingers crossed, and lots to look forward to. Yes. Thank you so much, Naz. It's been a great conversation. And again, I know people have really benefited from who've been able to watch today. Thank you very much. And that will complete our program.